Hello, what up, people? This is class 2 of the Gamer to Maker Game Dev Programming Mentorship Group. And today it's time to have your submissions checked by Josh. So, hopefully, all of you, most of you have actually submitted, some of you have not. So, I hope you have good excuses, and I hope those submissions will be coming in the next few days. So, without further ado, Josh, I shall remove my pin. Take it away.
Hey guys, so I went through some of the codes that you guys submitted. I sort of got a baseline of where you guys actually are. The point is, you're not like I wouldn't expect a completed project at this point. The main reason why we had this submission is because I need to figure out where you guys all stand in general so that I can have a baseline of where I can teach whenever I'm in classes. And then you guys continue with your own project, and that's where I come in and give you more support, right? The main purpose of me taking this class is basically from whatever submission that I have, even for the next week. And this is how the pattern is going to be, right? So I'll teach you guys something on one of these classes, and you guys try to apply those methods inside example project of your choice, and then give me as soon as possible. So assuming that you would probably do it in 3 or 4 days, and then by next week I'll probably review that code and sort of give you one-on-one feedback based on your code. Okay. But these classes will basically be like, then I'll find a baseline of where you guys, all of you guys stand, and then I give you a new concept for you guys to try out for the next week, so that there's this constant sort of practical learning loop that you will always have, right? Okay, awesome. So, so from most of the cases that you guys have already submitted, this is something that I put up in the last, say, 10 minutes just before the class. So I just wanted to get a flat line of what you guys have already done, right? So this is going to be a little interactive. So if you guys want to unmute and say a solution and then mute, or raise your hand and then say you can talk or something like that, we'll figure it out. So as of right now, you guys have something similar to this one. So let's take how you want to structure your project. This is regardless of Unity. Okay, so we'll keep non-centric to Unity. So in most cases, I have something similar to this one. So you guys move the bullet, and the bullet goes forward, and when it hits the other object, you guys either do a tag check. So tag check, some of you guys were doing a tag check. Some actually went to the extent of actually getting the object of the collision and then checking if that is there or not, and then you are destroying the bullet as well as the spaceship enemy. So this was when most of the cases you guys had something similar to this one. As for the enemy, I think some of you guys went to the extent of having the player have the score, and then I had a find tag, and then actually apply the points to the player, right? So these were the approaches. So as of now, right now, right, we have this method. Okay, there's this bullet that goes and collides with the enemy, and that destroys the enemy ship as well as it destroys the bullet itself. So this is very straightforward. I'm pretty sure most of you guys did the ship movement pretty much the same way that's expected, right? So I'm glad, for starters, I'm just glad that everybody sort of nailed the main mechanics of the game. So in a way, that means the game works, right? So let me tell you what's actually wrong with the code. It's nothing to do with the code not working, right? The code works, the output is there. So this is where I would probably say, if this is a college project or a student project, right? People would give a double thumbs up for whatever you guys have already submitted, right? The code works, the output is already there. But if this code is given for production, right, if whatever you guys have already done, if that was given to a production, that would probably wouldn't work when it comes to a team, right? So today I think we'll sort of talk about the concept modularity, right? So how can each of these classes communicate with each other? Can you guys give me a suggestion on how can I communicate with the scoring system? Like, just give me an example. Just type it out, or you can unmute and let me
Oh,
know where I'm supposed to put the points.
just a hypothetical suggestion. I think I worked on something like if we share the script that is attached,
Mhm.
uh, like we have some public variables in the game manager script, and we add that script as a component to other scripts as well. So they will be able to access the script as an object.
Awesome. So that's a good suggestion. Um, so have a manager class in between, right? So that it will communicate between these objects. That's actually cool. I mean, that's the right way of going about it. Okay. What we have is the player, the enemy, and the bullet. Okay. So I think there was a good suggestion that we can have a manager class right in between, so that each of these guys can, oh, yeah, this sucks. Okay. Each of these guys can communicate through the manager. So right, through a manager. So I think let's start with the manager. We'll start with writing a manager. Just try to help me out. Okay, so I'll just call it game manager. And public void, yeah, enemy dead or something like that. We call it enemy dead. I hope that's cool. And then I'll have something with points here. I'm trying to think from your guys' perspective and writing on based on that one. Okay, we'll call it score. Okay. I'll add an empty object just to have that component, right? So I'll call it game manager. You guys did. I'm going to add it here. Okay. So moving on. So once this bullet hits and the enemy takes a damage, I think I need to call the game manager somewhere here and add the score, right? How do I communicate with the game manager? Any suggestions?
We can take a serialized field that would be the game manager script, like using directly the class game manager.
So you're saying that I can have a serialized game manager here, right? Is that, am I doing it right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So okay, let's move on by actually working this out. So this is how you guys actually solve the problem. Just make sure the first thing that comes to your mind works, and then you look at from an angle that and say if this could be done in a better way, right? So okay, now I have game manager and I have enemy which has game manager here. So I can just drag and drop with this one. So far so good, right? So, but we might have a little problem here. So if I duplicate multiple enemies, right, then each of the enemy needs to maintain an instance of this object, right? The game manager. So somebody has to drag and drop. So the second problem that we'll probably face is if I instantiate this as a prefab doesn't have a connection with the game manager. So I'll prove that point right now. And I make an enemy a prefab. So the moment I do that, I'm already losing the game manager thing that I linked right here. So it seems to have this connection here because it's on the scene, it is there. But once it goes to the game object one, I think we'll lose that link because prefabs don't have a link with the scene reference or an instance of the object. Okay. So I think there should be a better way of doing this. I think some of you guys, I think, went to a way of actually using find, right? Find object of type and using game manager, right? I think, oh, who did that method, by the way? I think instead of manager, I think they used player somewhere. Like, who did that? I think it's Vidant, right? Vidant, then
Yeah, I think that's me.
you used to find object by type.
Yes.
Okay. So in most cases, these things sort of work, but then again, you're also sort of locking yourself down with whatever that Unity has to offer, right? So if you're trying to port this code to another engine, and then you'll probably find an issue like where is find object of type for this one, this engine or sort. So first things first, I think you guys need to think of Justin whoops and try to figure it out. So I'm going to teach you on a single a method called Singleton. So these are design practices that's been used in the industry for quite a while. So for example, if a class, let me reiterate what a singleton is. A class and an object, but it can have only one object, right? In this case, we have enemies, which can be multiple ones, right? If there's a class and that class will have only one object instance of any given time, then it's called a singleton. So in this case, we know for fact there can be only one game manager. You don't need two game managers, right? But you just need one game manager. So the easiest way of like doing that is if everybody knows what a static is, let me know. If you don't, I'll just reiterate that one. Uh, any of you guys here do not know what a static is, let me know right now. I'll explain it to you guys. Okay, a static is a way of having only one memory reference at one time, given time. Okay, so that means an object is not needed to access that property or method. Okay, so in this case, I think we'll go to game manager. We'll keep this one as such. So we don't need that. So here I'm going to create a static game manager. I'm just going to say same as game manager and going to call it instance. So I need to still assign a way of instance. So in usual constructors, right, whenever you actually create an object, then you would say inside the constructor, you would say, this is the instance that I need, right? But Unity doesn't have it, but instead they have something called awake. So we'll just use awake as a constructor and say instance equal to this instance. So we just assign it as this instance. Okay, so that we'll have one reference to this one. So the next step is having access through this instance. So I'm just going to make this public for now. Okay, I wouldn't do this method, but for the sake of example, I'll do this one, and I'll remove the game manager instance because I don't need it anymore. And here I would say game manager dot instance dot increase score of enemy dead. And and that would probably, I'm sorry, wrong engine. Static instance singleton. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight the game manager right here. Also, I saw a lot of hard coding inside your codes. Try to avoid hard coding at any given time. So the moment it actually collided, it actually increased to 10, right? So we know for fact that you can access the instance of the game manager even without having a find by reference or anything like that, right? So you guys know one of the methods of actually going about it. The second thing is, once you guys have figured out singleton, right? Never, I mean, a lot of people do practice this way where you directly have access to the instance, but in reality, at least within our studio, we try to not give access to the instance to the other classes, so that this static class cannot be static variables, right? Static properties shouldn't be accessed outside classes directly. So we usually make this private, and we access this class through a static variable, a static method, sorry. So since we have the same name here, I'll just put an underscore just to represent that one. So that we don't access the enemy dead directly. So we can just access it from here. It's the same thing, but in a different approach. So a little more cleaner way of accessing the game manager outside from the outside classes. So far, if you guys have understood this concept of having a singleton class as a communication medium between objects to talk, let me know. If you still have questions, let me just ping on the chat or just unmute yourself and let me know.
Sir, can you please repeat why you made the animated method static?
Okay, so static means you don't need an object to access this variable. Okay, any static variables mean you don't need to have an object to access it. For example, let me simplify this even more further, right? So here, if I say public static int, we'll keep something else. Of, um, this one, right? And we'll also create a non-static variable. That's public int bar. So ignore all of this. Okay, ignore all of this below. Okay, a static variable doesn't need an object to be accessed. So I'm outside some other class. Okay, it keeps popping up here. Right here, I'll create a temporary I'm going to create game manager. Dot, if I say this one, if I see look for foo, I can't see foo, right? Because that's a static variable. An object of type cannot be an object instance, right, of a class cannot access the static variable. So in that regard, if I go look for bar, I have access to the bar. Okay. See, it will redirect to this one because it doesn't have static. So if I just directly want to access this one, I don't need an object to access. So if I say foo, it's right there. Okay. I didn't create an instance of game manager to actually access static variables. So each class can have static variables for others to directly access it without having a game, without having an instance object of that class. Okay. So you guys understand what a static is, right?
So if we make a instance of game manager as static, so will it be the same thing?
Yes, it will be the same thing. There's
Okay.
there's only one memory allocated for that class. Okay, so even if you make 100 copies of game managers or 100 copies of enemies, it will always have the same value. So in this case, I'll let you know. Okay, so if an enemy has a static class, and I say this is the speed. Yeah, let's call it speed. Static class 10, and this is public. You won't see it on the here. It won't show up on the inspector, because on the inspector it just shows one instance of that you have actually created. So if I click on enemy, see, you don't see speed here because it doesn't belong to an instance, it belongs to the entire class. So you guys understood what a static is?
Yeah, I have a question. Like, if for the game manager script, like if you have to expose a number of methods other than enemy dead, like if you have 10 to 15 methods, wouldn't it be cumbersome to create two copies, one static and one private?
Yes. So this is also a design practice of coding. Sometimes writing redundant code actually sucks. I have to agree on that one. But the thing is, whenever you have some sort of documentation, right? This is how they usually do it. This is sort of an industry practice that they do. So they call this one as public methods. So whenever you're generating documentation based off your code, then having a static class with the full comments, right, like this, will generate those things better in most of the cases. I know having an instance class, direct access, and then accessing this one is actually easier than having at this as private, right? In most cases, what they do is they try to encapsulate the classes so that whenever you make a module out of this, right, especially when you go say, I'm trying to reverse transform, right? This is a Unity class and it belongs to DLL. So if I go inside, whenever you see an assembly browser, it only shows you the public methods that they already have. Okay. So this way they sort of protect the code whenever you have a larger project, working on a larger product. So this is sort of, if you want to do it, it's nice, right? When you're working on a bigger team, but you don't have to necessarily follow the same method, right? So it's sort of a gray area and whenever you join a company, they have certain amount of rules. This is how you want to access this. And in a lot of cases, even a lot of companies do directly access the instance class. At least in our office, we don't expose the instance to be directly accessed elsewhere, because if some cases, right, if these guys just say game manager instance equal to null, right? If somebody sets this as null, that's going to cause a problem. So that's why we don't actually expose this one, because assigning a property from outside of the class inside is never a good idea, especially at the static ones. So usually it's a good idea to access through either a property or a method. So even in C++, you guys sort of practice the same methods, right? I mean, these are sort of best practices. You don't necessarily need to follow them, but it's good to follow them. Simple as that. So yeah, I got a null reference because I could access it from the outside. So if everybody understood what a static is and a singleton is, Let me know. There are other ways of actually creating singletons. This is the basic form of creating a singleton inside Unity or in most game engines that we actually use. So if now that everybody has an idea of singleton, try to incorporate this one with the Space Invader game or pick some other small game. Say I think let's move for an even so that you guys will have fun trying a new project. So let me take a vote on this. So do you guys want to like modify your Space Invader so that it will have a singleton method to communicate between each objects and then resubmit the code again? Is that cool? Or you guys want to do a fresh project?
I would go for a fresh project.
You want to pick, you guys have any vote? Let me think of another simple game that we can do. A tic-tac-toe should be fine. No, tic-tac-toe is too simple. Let me.
So, Tetris?
You guys want to use a Space Invader itself?
Did somebody say Tetris?
Tetris?
Can we go for Flappy Bird game?
I think Flappy Bird is fine. Okay, let's do a Flappy Bird. Okay. Okay, so for the next class, right? For the next class, so try to implement the singleton methods and trying to communicate between objects using a singleton. Next class, I think we'll learn through delegations and events. Okay, so that we have not just a direct way of contacting the enemy equal to dead, right? So what we have is basically the enemy contacting the game manager and saying that, hey, this enemy is dead. Okay, this is not wrong. Don't get me wrong. It's not a wrong way of actually doing it, but there are better way of doing each other. So communicating between each other, right? So I think we'll try those methods. Okay. So what I'm teaching here is sort of like practices that you can just apply to a project. If it doesn't work, it's fine. There are better ways of doing the same thing in different path, right? So as you guys do it, you will understand which one to use when. So the moment I think one of our devs, when we taught them how to use the event system, right? He got so excited, he just created events for literally everything. So we were like, dude, you don't have to. There's something called over engineering and oversimplification, right? You need to sort of have a final balance in between, and that will only happen as many projects as you guys do. And that's why I asked if you guys can do on another project, a fresh project. Now you have a better understanding of what you guys are coding, right? And there's no necessary for you guys to actually do a Flappy Bird. You can still apply singleton in your Space Invader if you guys didn't have any time to do. So that's cool as well. So I'm trying to teach you concepts here. So the guys who wants to do Flappy Bird, by all means go ahead. The guys who want to just apply this method inside their existing Space Invader, that's also fine. Okay. So let me know if you guys are okay with this. Cool.
Yep, cool.
Got a thumbs up, everyone. That's good to know. So can I teach you guys one more concept, or are you guys cool with this one? You guys have any other queries? Let me know. So, okay, I'll ask you from you guys. So what are the way of actually, do you think it would be okay to communicate between without having a static method that's been triggered? So without doing this one. So this way I'm actually directly accessing a static method inside the game manager. Let me know if you guys, okay, let's talk, I'm sorry. Let's talk about MVC. How many of you guys know the term MVC? Okay, so let me just give you an overview, just read about it before the next class so that you'll have some understanding. MVC is not necessarily applicable to games.
Sorry, Josh, that's Mike Bravo Charlie or Can you just M?
Okay, let me mess up. So MVC is called model view controller. Okay. So this method is not applied for games in most cases, but some parts of it is actually applied. This is mostly used in a web development, but I think we can take some concepts from this and apply it to games. Okay, so we'll have our own sort of MVC controller. So this is where I'm sort of teaching you guys design patterns and principles. So there is the moment when I say MVC, if I said the same thing in Stack Overflow or another forum, right, it will immediately spark so much debate, right? People will be like, no, 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 this is not the right way of doing it. You don't even need MVC. Yes, you don't need MVC. So I'm not pro MVC or against MVC or anything like that. So don't get caught in the entire debate things, right? So what I'm trying to teach is as much as design principles and patterns as possible, so that you can apply wherever you guys need. So there's a reason why these patterns are already there. That means they are still debated, and sort of a better way will be found out every day, right? These are concepts of software engineering as such. But we'll try to discuss and see if it makes our lives easier whenever we are making a game. This is where we sort of draw the line between over engineering and oversimplification. We need to do engineering just to simplify our own project management as such, right? And something that we have to also consider whenever we are working with a team. So that's why MVC is sort of an important model whenever you're working with the team. So in your team, somebody would be working on the UI, and the other person with game mechanics as such, and somebody would be probably writing an audio, or will be taking care of the audio stuff, right? So in this regard, I think we can take some principles from model view controller. So I'll tell you what a model view controller is. Basically, a model is basically you see, say the enemy is a model. So you sort of figured out an enemy. So let me take bullet is a much more better example. So we all sort of came to an understanding and said that bullet needs to have speed, bullet needs to have damage, and bullet also communicates with the collision system. So that's the model that we have. The property of model would be speed and damage, right? View is what you see as a sprite. So it's already here. It's so whenever I'm saying bullet, so in this case, right, since Unity allows us to have multiple things stacked up on one object itself, and this concept is called ECS. We'll discuss it later on, but don't get caught up on this one. So we are just stacking bunch of properties on top of this bullet object. So bullet is also the controller. View in this regard, I would say sprite renderer, right? And the model is speed and damage, which represents what it is. So we have all three components on the same object itself, in this regard, game object, right? So we have both all three MVC, three of those properties on one game object itself. So in some cases you want to split them, right? In this case, if so, in this game manager, we have score being actually added, right? So, but we need to also need to have another view for the score. We know a controller for game object, game manager is a controller that increases a score, and model is the game score, right? This is the model right here. What you see is the model right here. This is the model, and we have the control right here. Okay, we need a view. So in most cases, what would people generally do is, um, I'll just add a text, right? I'm blind because I can't see stuff. Did you guys, any of you guys add score to your this one? I don't see it. Yes, yes, yes. Oh yeah, that's right. It's there. Small. Okay. Suggestion time. Okay, nice, dude. Nice. Guru, congrats. So okay, how would you guys want to update the score text? So you guys have a view. So I'm just going to add a view to this one by having slashed um, okay, the moment it actually hit, it just added 10. And in this case, right, this canvas text view is the view in the MVC. So is this right? Yes, it right. It's sort of right. It works, right? Now that everybody's happy, it sort of works. But this is what we call a spaghetti code in the industry, right? When you have two different views or two different models sort of merging together just because Unity allows you to do it, right? So if some guy is working only on the UI, right? You wouldn't actually drag and drop this reference on the game manager. Okay. So this is where we sort of talk about the concept of modularity, right? Then the code needs to have be modular so that the UI guy can work on his own stuff and you on the logic. And then you guys like merge the code together and it should work without any hiccup. So I think now that the time is already up, I think now I sort of raised the problem how you guys could do without having a spaghetti code. Okay, in the next Flappy Birds or the Space Invader, if you guys have the scoreboard right on the score, make sure that find a way of not directly having a reference to the text object, right? So the game manager shouldn't have a direct link to this one, neither the canvas or the UI manager having a direct link to the game manager and then doing stuff on an update. Okay, that's the assignment for you guys in the next class. Try to find a different way of not having directly access an instance of text and then also run a logic inside a different model. Okay, so that's it. I hope you guys understood the assignment for the next project or the modification of spacing rate. If so, give me a thumbs up. Cool then. I think next class is Tuesday. I expect a singleton or a different approach of accessing the UI without having the reference directly dragged and dropped.
Tell us what was your takeaway? What did you learn today? Anybody?
Yeah, it's just like you are dropped into an ocean and you have to build something like out of the scratch. You don't know the first thing you're going to do. And I took up this thing like I won't be looking up as tutorials or sample codes, and I'll just fidget with the documentation and see if I can get something done. And yeah, the math part is fun. At least when you have to calculate something where it has to be instantiated, where it should move next, etc. So it's a fun process if you are like doing it from the scratch.
Okay.
And yeah,
So we should do it from the scratch.
no, I mean at least for the first activity, that was my
So
experience.
okay. So why we did this approach is there are already bunch of tutorials out there, right? So I can sort of like go through or just do my own way of doing a space invader, right? And the moment you guys see that, it'll be basically like how you work out in the mathematics class. As when the teacher is working the math problem, you would understand everything just fine. But when you try to do it on your own, then you sort of like have a struggle automatically, right? So that's why I didn't want to walk through just like a tutorial in Space Invader or any other game, right? Here we are sort of like, I'm trying to put you guys out of your comfort zone and sort of put you on a drowning effect so that you'll feel sort of suffocated, and drowning effect should be there, right? That's where you actually learn. That's why self-taught people always remember more whenever they go through this process. So that's why I asked you just to do one project out of the box so that you guys will be out of your comfort zone and trying to figure out it by yourself. So a programmer by the end of the day is a problem solver, right? So that's why I give you the hardest problems. And as it progresses, right, I'm going to give you more difficult problems. And if you guys want mathematics and that stuff, I think we can go there. It's not that we won't go there. So just for starters, right, we want to go through the basics of hoops. That's why I wanted to go through Singleton right away, because the moment I saw most of you guys code, right, none of you guys had a manager class that can communicate between each other and didn't use a sort of a static class. Some yes, some I think two or one I think used. Since the baseline was there, I wanted to teach you guys how you can each object can communicate with each other through a manager class. Then we just go through some design patterns that is sort of famous along game design. So that's where we are at this point. So I think we'll go into mathematics and all those stuff once everybody is on the same page on how to actually structure the project and how to structure your architect your entire project, right? So that's the approach that we are looking at for right now.